Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf, the podcast, a serial killer drama.
My little pony, what is friendship all about?
Hello, this is Will Your Werewolf, and yes, this is season 4 of Werewolf the podcast. I know I was going to have a break, but then I thought, fuck it, I'll just carry on. This one's called Unicorns Are Rare, and it's episode 76 in total. Hooray! Unicorns are rare. Thank fuck. A unicorn is a rare but beautiful thing in the human world. A woman who wants to join a hetero couple for a threesome. You can imagine that they are rare and much enjoyed. It always makes me laugh how men think it's okay to stick their bits in another woman, but so wrong for another man to stick their bits in their woman. Ownership. It's okay for their partner to sleep with someone of the same sex, but he would never have another man in his bed, never mind having another man's cock in himself. Seems a little sexist. Humans are weird. This was not one of those beautiful examples of human unicorns. This was the unicorn of myth. I'd tracked it down to its fair lair somewhere. It sits on the other side of the water curtain beneath the fall that roars its way to the earth and pools in a bubbling cauldron of chaotic motion. It looks impossible to get to, but it's not. If that can get there, then so can I. I'd get in there and fucking murder it. The late evening sun shines through the thrown-up moisture droplets that fill the air, giving the sky around the fall a beautiful mass of rainbows and sparkles, all glitter and stuff. It seems to be the fitting place or the fitting thing for the home of a fucking unicorn. It reminds me of the start of a 50s Disney cartoon. I feel like throwing up my sick droplets to fuck up those rainbows. I hate these waterfalls and rainbows. Is this artwork from a Yes album cover or something? I managed to find the little secure path running to the back of the fall, making its way dry beneath the cliff to the cave behind the wall of water. Well, I managed to find it, but all I did was follow the stench of the beast. They reek awful. Let me try to describe it. No, it's not a smell of candy, cotton and sweetness. It's like rotting fish guts mixed with sewage and bile. No, that's not it. It's much worse. That makes it sound relatively healthy. It's like oh shit. It's like a fucking unicorn. The smell is awful. How they mask that from their human prey, I have no idea. It makes them easy to follow though, so I'm pretty grateful. That is where the creature lives. Oh no, this is not a Monty Python's demon bunny, but a truly dangerous and genuinely mental creatures. Horses are already nuts, already madly strung bundles of nerves that could kick off any time, but this is even worse. It has a giant horn in the middle of its fucking head that it can use as a weapon. Not that it needs it. Its hooves and kicks are enough to kill most things it wants to, and to be honest, it does like to do a lot of killing. These things are not the friendly rainbow pooing creatures you hear about in fairy tales. Unicorns are so pretty and noble to look at, are they not? They have a certain magical glamour that they impose on humans, mainly because humans are easy to hypnotise. Thank goodness unicorns are rare. Otherwise, it would be a very difficult world. We'll go into more details about why in a little while. The glamours they impose on humans are not the kindly glamour of a Disney creature. They like virgin girls for a reason. There are no female unicorns. Have you worked it out yet? Or do I have to go into further details? I'll give you some time. Yeah, that is right, yeah. There are baby unicorns, but there are no female unicorns. You can see the need for virgin girls. Yet, only one reason. The reason is reproduction. You may wonder, why is it always a virgin girl? I mean, is it something unique that virgins have, or something that they don't have? The power to be, good at sex or something. All these poor girls die in the birthing process. They are a bit large, unicorns that is, to be birthed naturally. The baby giant horse has to rip its way free from the womb when ready. Just like that clip in Alien when the xenomorph pops its way free from Kane's belly during lunch. The difference between the two is obvious. One rips its way from an innocent young virgin's belly instead of some hard-nosed spaceman. Excellent film though, Alien. Some cryptozoologists have thought that the horn on its head is like the egg tooth on a baby bird's beak, used to chip its way out of the egg. The horn seems to be used to tear its way through the human's body until a hole is big enough to pull its way out. Can you imagine it? All the blood screaming and ripping of flesh. Yuck. I'm glad I'm not a young virgin girl. Anyway. This is not the only way these girls die. Some die in the conceiving process as well. Can you imagine it? Actually, don't. That's probably against the law where you live, I think. Bestiality is not acceptable, except in some American states, apparently. Unicorns are crazy, massive, horny horses with a mind to rape of young human girls. There, I said it. Nasty fucks, huh? Why am I hunting this one then, you may ask? Is it out of consideration for the little girls? Have I a soft spot for young virgins? Well, I have no soft spot for young virgins. It's not soft. A spot I do have though. No, it's out of the curiosity to see what would happen if I got to grips with one. I like hunting and killing, and a big fuck-off horse with a sword on its head seems somewhat of a worthy adversary. Also, can you imagine having that fucker stuffed? With its head over your mantelpiece when guests come over for dinner? Interesting you ask about it, Daphne. Well, I was out in the mountains of Chile when this beast decided to horn its way into my life, and I took its head. Makes a good coat hook, doesn't it, dear? They are rare for a particular reason. Knights killed most of them off, to be honest. They were recognised as a creature of Satan in the 13th century, and the church decided to rid the Christian lands of them. They secretly pronounced to the gentry that they must kill them off. It worked almost as well as it did with the hunting of wolves. Wolves were hunted to extinction pretty quick. So you can imagine, unicorns were hunted to extinction pretty quick. Well, almost. In England, the last unicorn was killed in 1513 by a young King Henry VIII. He did all this well before he started enjoying smashing down the Catholic Church, beheading his wives and going mental with the plethora of STDs that plagued the dirty old man. Was he a dirty old man or a lucky old man? I mean, he did a lot of shagging to get those diseases. I suppose it's a point of view thing. Lucky or dirty? He could fight, fuck or be friends with anyone in his little country. That is some power right there. Knights are pretty dumb, so I often wondered how they managed to get past the glamour of the beasts. They were a weird thing if you think about it. Pious killers who did the chivalry and all that, but like nothing more than drinking, partying and violence. They were proper fighting machines as well. They were well fed from birth and trained daily to be the best killers they could be. They were 6-foot-something murderers wrapped in armour. They were medieval tanks. Knights probably thought it was the protection of God or some same shit that stopped them from being glamoured. However, they were as thick as mints, so they probably had no idea about the unicorn's glamour in the first place. I reckon it was the armour myself. You may have heard of the fairy, or fairy, if you spell it with an E, world having a bit of a difficulty with the metal iron. Well, they do. And as the unicorn is a creature of fairy, then the iron suits that the knights covered themselves in were a form of protection in two ways. To be honest, the knights did for most of the fabulous beasts, dragons, trolls and cool things like that. Only 2 unicorns were left by the end of the 1500s, and they'd run off into the fairyland for a few centuries of safety. That was all good and that. They were very safe. People had forgotten the magic in the fairy world. Now the only people who cared were children, men with neckbeards, and the kind of woman who has a mermaid and a dolphin, tarot card deck. The problem with fairyland was the lack of those delicious virgins, so unicorns had to come back at some point, not to procreate and have kids, but to satiate their own needs. See, they're horrible beasts, so you moralistic animals that are worried that I want to kill a beautiful beast will be happy to know that I am killing them. You don't believe me, do you? You still think they're pretty creatures? Well, I'm still going to kill it. I can hear the breathing of the unicorn in the cave. The stench of the beast is somewhat repugnant, but I don't stop me from ripping its fucking head off. It will be a challenge. This is not My Little Pony. This is my big fuck-off horsey. This thing weighs about 2,500 pounds. It's 20 hand tall. Whatever that means. What the fuck is a hand in size anyway? Let me look it up on Google and do the maths for you metrical people. This thing is 1,100 kilograms and over 6'5" from the front hoof to the tips of its ears. That's 210 centimeters. That's a big fucker. I had decided to attack it in the cave, as it would be a bit more difficult to kill this thing in a large open area like a field. If a big creature puts its head down and charges, it might be a little difficult to stop. You might as well reduce the risks of being stabbed by a big horn. I wander into the space unannounced, but it knows I'm here, and it's looking at me. Those eyes are absolutely terrifying. I'm looking into the most insane thing that I've ever experienced. With most living things, I can work out a little how they're going to behave when a giant wolfman walks into their lives. This thing in front of me was, just madly unstable and seemingly ready to do anything. There was no sense of fear from it. It wasn't angry. It was not responding in any sensible way. It looked at me, working out where it could stab me first. That was all. How on earth am I going to go about this? I usually rely on getting some emotional response to work with, but the horsey thing was staring at me with just sheer madness in its head. I took a deep breath and roared my biggest and scariest roar at the white monster. It lasted for a while and echoed around the cave, finally taking some time to fade. It was extremely impressive, I have to admit. I was pleased with it. It would have made any human shit themselves, literally. The horse snickered as though giggling and raised its head. It's really hard to maintain eye contact with a creature with an eye on each side of its head, so it was a little disconcerting trying to stare at it in a frightening manner. Suddenly the unicorn reared and kicked its front feet into the sky. It leapt and kicked out with its back legs, and the hooves sparked as they struck the granite. The noise the horse made then was not a neigh you hear in any kind of nursery rhyme. If you asked your toddler what noise does a horsey make, and the kid made that noise, you would be looking for a priest to remove the demon. I was impressed, to be honest. I started my slow movement forward as the horse landed on all 4 feet in a graceful and somewhat balletic manner. It kept its eyes on me somehow and went silent, just watching me. This again was very disconcerting. As I slowly approached, I knew I would have to get to a reasonable distance to charge, so I did, leaping across the space between us, claws ready to tear the throat, teeth bared to rip into its hide. It moved with an impossible speed and span to have its rump towards me. Clever. There would be nothing I could really injure severely enough with my initial attack to kill it. Scratches and rends would be in thick flesh, the throat and head out of the way of the werewolf's leap. Suddenly, the reality of the move actually came to fruition. The rear legs kicked and hit me in the chest. The world altered as they made contact. My forward movement stopped as the hooves bit deep into my chest and knocked all the wind out of me. I felt ribs smash and break as it launched me into the air, making me fly across the cave and crash in a heap on the wall, and then slowly I slunk down to the ground. I was winded so bad that I could not draw breath. I felt the blood in my throat, and the impacts of the horsey legs had smashed me so severely that I was now, let's just say, very broken. After I had gotten over this initial moment of discombobulation, I looked over at the unicorn. It was facing me as though it had never moved. It looked relaxed and like a big horse with a horn on its head. I couldn't move or do anything but just sit there and try and breathe. Oh, when I felt better, that horsey would get fucking battered. I would just need a moment of recovery, waiting for things to knit back together. I watched the horse have a shit while it held eye contact. That was not good. Eventually I rose to my feet, shaking off the pain and my bruised pride. In my head I made an announcement. Right, you fucking nag. You've booked a trip to the fucking glue factory. This time I circled the beast carefully. I realised I would not get out of sight of this creature because it had that 360-degree vision. So no sneaking up on this thing. Then it came to me. Distraction. So I ran away. It worked. The stupid thing started to follow me and chase me down the unlit tunnel into the bright outside world. I was running at full pace in my wolf form with an avenging unicorn keeping pace but at some distance behind me. I knew that when we got out into the light it would take some time to adjust to the bright light, so I ran on with the hope that my vision, that is, would adapt very, very quickly. I was hoping that the beast behind me, as it would come out, would not be able to see me properly. Its vision would be blinded. I came out into the brightness and threw myself to one of the sides of the tunnel mouth and waited for the fucker to come flying out at speed. It was easy to estimate when he would arrive from the noise of the hooves on the rock and the heavy horse breathing. Then it was going past, and I leapt onto his neck and grabbed his head, sinking my claws deep into the creature's flesh. My added weight knocked the horse sideways and its footing was offset. I felt the beast come off balance and fall with the extra weight hitting it at speed. It crashed to the floor with me standing on its side as he slid along the ground to a stop, a squealing heap of nonsense legs flying around in all directions and to no avail. Not so tough off its legs, was it? I had the upper hand here. I tore with my feet along its flank as I slid my forepaw claws deep into the throat and let fly the blood from its arteries. It struggled below me as it flopped around, trying to shake me off as it bled, and I ripped it apart. It slowly died. When things get stabbed, clawed or bitten, it doesn't tend to kill things quickly. Things have to bleed out to die. An enormous creature takes a long time to bleed out, and it still struggled a little as the blood pooled in the grass. It slowed in its movements, and then just lay there gasping for air. I grabbed it by the horn and lifted its head off the now sticky floor. I stood over it as it failed. Its eyes were full of fear, and it knew it was dying. I smiled at it. I'd won, yay me! I reached down and tore out its throat. Fuck unicorns. That's the end of the episode. Hope you enjoyed it. See, unicorns aren't the lovely thing you thought they were going to be, were they? If you would like to buy me a coffee, then you can go and support the show with a link down in the description. There's a Facebook group if you want to go and join other psychotic monsters like myself. And there's also a book. If you want to buy that, that would be great. Love you loads. Bye.
Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf, the podcast. a serial killer drama.